how is this going to help you human players? I think on maps that are not very large, like Echo Isles, a lot of the 2-player maps, some of the 4-player maps, I think you should try to set a fast expansion. If you have an easily accessible natural expansion, I definitely think you should, go for it. If that fits your playstyle, there's plenty of other viable undead strategies, not involving tanks and towers, that you can try. Um, but let's just focus on this particular strategy. Uh, I would suggest you go a regular footman build. Then after your second expansion is going up, put up a second barracks. Now using this barracks, you will be able to produce many more footmen and use these footmen with defend to infiltrate the undead's base. Hopefully, with proper timing, you can find him during attack. In which case, he will have like one less cold tower that hauls the dead. That black citadel won't be blasting your units, and that one Nerubian tower is not going to do crap against defended footies that already move slow as hell. So infiltrate their base, try to kill a few acolytes, try to cancel the slaughterhouse, even kill a few ghouls, whatever. You don't really even need to deal much damage to the undead at this point. You just need to keep him away from your expansion. TP, whatever. As long as you don't lose your heroes, you should be okay. Because footmen, with the undead nuke, you're really not going to have much use for this footman late in the game. So, I guess you could sacrifice them to high-level creeps if you wanted to. But I prefer to just throw them into the undead base. Because you'll gain so much more like time and advantage and resources from the time the undead wastes, fending off your attack. In the same sense, siege tanks are very useful for exerting pressure on different portions of the map. You could see, late game Infinity he had it won, so he was just kind of doing some random shit. He built 2 siege engines, and they acted more as like just soaking up damage, and I guess diverting the opponent. And you don't have to build siege engines if you don't want to. Now, it's very important when you do this kind of strategy, the dual barracks pressure strategy, that you prepare to counter those destroyers, because depending on how the undead plays, he will get these he will be able to still produce destroyers very quickly by sacrificing other things. He may not build as many fiends. He may like a straight tack. He may turtle in his base because his army sucks. But depending on how motivated your opponent is, he'll get destroyers out. And so that's what you need to watch out for. You need to be ready for him. Other than that, I think you are all set. For you undead players, I like when you harass the expansion being put up. You can coil snipe some weak peasants, maybe some weak footmen, or water elementals if you get the chance. I think that the money that the human wastes putting up that expansion and replacing killed peasants and... Wow, my microphone just fell off my head. That was really cool. The money used replacing, killed peasants and militia and peasants or footmen, or... I know I said peasants twice. I really don't care. The money he uses, he can be made to pay for. Like, he'll be down for a good bit of the game, and so he's going to want to play off like he's being aggressive, when in fact he's not that strong. He's really economically down at that early stage of the game, and that's when you need to strike. By that point, you should have a healthy army of fiends and ghouls, I would suggest, and you can really harass. Sometimes when I play against human, whether it's in mirror or whether I random, another race, and I see him putting up mass towers, I'm actually kind of happy because I feel like I've done my job in that I have forced him to adapt to what I'm doing. I've made him have to waste a lot more resources on towers as opposed to being able to use them for units. And that will give me the army advantage, and then I can carry on from there. In this case, what I think Eric did wrong. First off, I feel that Eric should have started off with some ghouls and should not have crept. If he did creep, I think that he should have, solo crept with ghouls, while his Death Knight went around the map and harassed the human players' expansion. After that, we go into like the tier 2 stage. His slaughterhouse got canceled. There really wasn't anything he could do about it besides, putting his first slaughterhouse in the back of his base, which, is something you might want to plan for as far as setting up your base early game. I don't really know too much about the Undead's base layout and what he needs to look for, but I definitely imagine that would be high on the priority list. Just protect your slaughterhouse at tier 2. Next, Eric, for whatever reason, did not build a second slaughterhouse throughout the game. Huge mistake. Ultimately, I think that was the biggest reason he lost the game, because Infinity had not really fortified himself, which I think is nice. But had Infinity's army been broken, he wouldn't have really had any refuge in his base or anything, because destroyers, of course, rape towers, a small amount of towers, as well as militia. And so, those are his base defenses right there, and destroyers counter both of them pretty nicely. So you're looking good at that point if you can beat the army. That being said, the human players need to really watch out for their army. And late game, their army is very important to them because they don't have the towers. They don't have the base defenses that the Undead has. And so definitely TP out over losing units, because that you'll fall into a hole that you can't climb out of, especially with the UD nuke. You'll be able to do hit and runs, and it's just a bad situation for you. As this is, quite contradictory to the early game strategy, where it's like, whatever, Footman dies, who cares? Because it's early game. Human players, especially, I think, need to really monitor their play styles and their and actually have like a dynamic play style throughout the game. Like, don't always play aggressive. I think at certain stages of the game, like late game maybe, it might be good to play defensively and not losing units and picking and choosing your battles wisely, as opposed to early game where you might be wanting to get time and therefore you may be a bit more aggressive, a bit more confrontational. With that being said, I will sign off. It has been a pleasure recording this for you guys, and I hope you enjoy.